are listening to Know You're Crazy. My name is Susan Denee. We all have crazy. What separates us is how we choose to deal with it. I'm going to be delivering engaging and actionable tools to own your crazy, treat your crazy, and turn it into your own superpower. I hope that you walk away from this show feeling the power and strength within you. And never forget to enjoy your journey because you are worth it. Hey everyone, welcome to the Know You're Crazy talk show. My name is Susan Denee, and you are listening to Emotional Recovery in the Raw. And today's guest is going to help you if you are an aspiring entrepreneur or you are an entrepreneur that has been around for a while and you are looking for some joy and some growth, then today's guest is here to deliver that to you. If you're feeling overwhelmed and underperforming, then we are here to help you fix that. Today's guest is Dr. Mark Leonard. Mark is an entrepreneur and business owner for over 20 years. He currently owns 2 businesses and on average employs at least 20 people. For Mark, learning about why some people are successful while others struggle is a passion for 16 of those 20 years. He not only earned his education degree in organizational leadership from Pepperdine University, he gained expertise in helping companies and their leaders achieve sales and operational goals. Helping individuals have breakthroughs and achieving higher success levels became his passion. So much so it led to his training and certification as a human performance expert and industry-leading certified high-performance coach. Mark has been blessed to help thousands of business owners, leaders, and entrepreneurs to their success. In addition to the education and the repetition of helping others, Mark understands what it takes to be successful while engaging in a flourishing marriage, as he is happily married to Becky, his wife of 30 years. They have 6 children and 12 grandchildren. When it comes to juggling life's priorities, Mark gets it. So, Mark, super great to have you here today. I'm excited to talk about this topic with you because I feel like a baby in this area, and I think that there is to me, it feels like a whirlwind of entrepreneurs right now, perhaps in the opportunities online to do that, people really understanding how to go into business for themselves. And then you have successful businesses like you operate in addition to your own individual coaching platform. So, I mean, just jump in. I'm ready to hear what you got today and tell us a little bit about you and your story and how you got to where you're at.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you, Susan. I appreciate being on here and the opportunity to kind of share a little bit about not only my story, but also my experiences and even some of the research or how I got started in this whole thing. But it's always an interesting question. Where did I come up with this idea? When did I start this practice of the happiness breakthrough or looking at why people are successful or why other people are not? And I think it goes back to being married. We got married 2 weeks out of high school.
Wow.
Like we graduated high school and we got married in 2 weeks. and all of a sudden the world's pressure was on me and everyone had the answer, right? Everyone was like, oh, you need to do this. Oh, you would be great at this. And for years, I followed a lot of what people said until all of a sudden I realized it wasn't who I was.
Yeah.
And I think that's where this whole journey started was, who am I? And dang it, why are there people that just keep seeming to climb the corporate ladder when I seem to be struggling to, wade through the murk and the mud and figure out who I was? And I was just so interested in that idea of who am I really and who can I become and what am I going to do next? And funny enough, I was in college and I just shared this story just recently for one of the first times ever. I was in college and I was called into the academic probation office. And I'm married with little ones. And the counselor sits me down and says, okay, Mark, well, you're failing and you've had 2 semesters in a row of below 2.0. And so we need to put you on academic probation. If you don't fix it in the next couple weeks, you're going to be invited to leave campus. And I went, invited to leave campus? Son of a gun, I don't want to do that. And then I had to go home and tell my wife, hi, sweetheart, I know that you're working so hard, but I'm failing.
Oh.
And that was really hard. And then, so I got my act together and I was able to hold it together for a little bit longer. I transferred universities. I was matriculating when I was called into the academic probation office a second time. New university, but a second time. And they said, you know, Mark, you need to get your act together or we're going to invite you to leave. I thought, dang, why isn't this sticking? What am I doing where I keep on hitting this pattern of excitement and doing well, fail? Excitement, doing well, fail. And I just wanted to break that cycle because I felt like I was doing it all the time. By the way, that course that I failed 4 times, I now have a doctorate in. So
that's fantastic.
Sometimes it's okay to fail as long as you're failing forward.
You know, my motto is just don't stop. That's one of my mottos, like just don't stop. Especially, I think, you know, I was even having a conversation with my 18-year-old today. And now that I'm watching my children have to make decisions right out of high school, I remember being so overwhelmed back then. And I believe that our beliefs, our environment, the culture that we're being raised in, and what's being influenced, there's this thing that's out there that says, you know, graduate high school, go to college, know what you're going to be for the rest of your life, right? And today I remember going through that and feeling extremely overwhelmed, not knowing what I want to do. I did general studies, ended up flunking out of the first year and a half of University of Nebraska, right? Like, I was shocked when I went back to school online to ASU a few years back that credits don't expire. I thought, you got to be kidding me. You mean those I don't even know what it was, art history from, 1990 something is still good? Like, wow. But it was comical to me because it's such a young age to be asking yourself, what do I want to be when I grow up? And, and that question that you're bringing up, who am I? I mean, isn't that like the $1 million question that overwhelms some of our youth when they're coming out of high school with so many options?
Yeah.
Yeah. So many options. So what was the next thing you did? Like, how did you, what happened? What happened?
Well, apologize to my wife. That was the very next thing. I am so sorry you are married to this guy who just seems to not figure it out. But I eventually figured it out. And I eventually just persevered and kept going. I changed my degrees. I don't even want to know how many times. I should have just stuck with all of them. I probably have 5 or 6 bachelor degrees. I mean, I was never happy with where I was. And that was the big thing is I kept telling myself, oh, I'll be happy when, right? It's those stories that we tell people, oh, I'll be happy when I lose the weight. I'll be happy when I make enough money. I'll be happy when and insert whatever that is. And that's actually not happiness. That sounds a whole bunch like difficult, painful, just mind-numbing, emotionally heightened conversations that you're having with yourself.
Don't you think that part of that is also because we don't know how to give ourselves permission to do what we like?
100%.
Like if you really got quiet and you asked yourself, and you must have done this at some point, and I've recently done it over the last 5 to 10 years, but when you really get quiet and you ask yourself, what do I like to do? Because I think we're so scared that, well, I don't know, if I like to crochet, nobody, I think, automatically, they might start doing it now. What can I do to make money crocheting? Or what can I do to make a business out of that? Like, I could actually do what I like to do versus comparing to what maybe, I don't know, beliefs we adopted from society or the way it's supposed to look. I don't know where we adopt all those beliefs, but yeah.
Well, yeah, they're called belief systems, right? Because it's a bunch of BS. Belief systems are BS. We're being told certain things. you need to do X, Y, and Z. You need to go be successful. I mean, I remember my dad very clearly saying, you will never be successful until you make $150,000 a year.
Mm.
That was like 25 years ago.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
$150,000 25 years ago, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I was constantly batting up against this whole idea of this oppressive, you'll never be successful unless, and it was all tied to money. And
Yeah.
when I found real happiness is when I started doing exactly what you said, focusing on the things that I love. By the way, we own another business. I forgot to tell you, we bought another one, and I now employ over 30 teenagers.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I remember, for anybody watching, I met Mark because we were both at a coaching summit, and it was a fantastic summit. And it's a great way to connect with others, especially when you're in the solo journey, or if you're a business entrepreneur or a coach or something. But it's such a fantastic way to get to know individuals. And you had told me about that. And I would love for you to expand a little bit on the employment of teenagers, and because you do an amazing work with teenagers, and really giving them the training wheels, I would say, of perspective on how to look at things. I just think that's fantastic.
Yeah, and honestly, it's one of the things that drives me nuts. I'm a dad of 6 kids. My youngest, I have 5 that are off the payroll, they're married.
Yeah.
We have 12 grandchildren. I have 30 teenage employees. And one of the things that just drives me insane is when I hear teachers, coaches, civic leaders, when I hear business leaders or business owners, they say, oh, the teenagers, they're lazy, they're terrible. And I just sit here and go, have you ever heard the labels they're putting on you? Because you got to knock that off. How about instead of labeling, how about empowering?
There you go.
And that's what I love to do. And it's my passion, is helping teenagers find their voice, give them experience, give them an opportunity to rise, and let them speak. Let them make decisions.
Oh, that is so empowering. My 18-year-old recently got promoted. She works for a little cookie shop, and she was promoted to shift leader. And she made me chuckle the other day. She says, we get off at closing time and we're out of there. Usually it takes us till 12:30, but I wanted to get out of there at midnight. And so she told me all about this plan that she got everybody out at midnight. And I said, well, Abby, how did you do that? And first thing she says, delegate. Like, she just delegate. And I got so-and-so who's usually on his cell phone. I went over there and showed him how to get it done. And it was just this fantastic, abilities that they have at that age, that they really, truly, give them a little bit of leadership and ownership, and they truly can make it happen.
Oh, not only do I believe that, not only do I know that it works, one of the things I do is in an interview, I force them to ask me questions because I want them to start to think, right?
Yes.
So I'll just say, okay, well, do you have any questions? And who has a question in an interview? Most people are like, oh, no, I'm fine. So I got tired of that response. I decided to be more proactive. I said, okay, I've asked you a bunch of questions. It's your turn to ask me a question.
Yeah.
And they go, oh, what's your favorite color? I said, that's a great question. And I explain it. And I said, but ask me something that really gets to know me. And suddenly they stop and someone's interested in their opinion.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you show that you're interested in someone's opinion, when you value them, when you respect them, when you show that you understand them, and write those out. Value, respect, understood. That's what people want.
Yep.
That's what adults want. That's what teenagers want. So start having conversations that you show that you value who they are. And suddenly they start asking you questions. And now, here's what's awesome. Now, when they're employed, they're not afraid to ask questions. Oh, what do you know? That's how we all learn, as we ask questions. Let's teach them to learn. And we do it in a way that is very friendly and in a way that really helps them. I do it to the point that even my manager, I have a salaried manager. She's 19 years old.
Wow.
She is running one store by herself. And when I say a store, we're talking the number 3 store in the nation for our franchise.
Oh my goodness.
Out of 100 is
That's
being run by a
fantastic.
19-year-old. And everyone goes, "You're insane." I said, really? I don't think I'm insane. I think I'm empowering and I'm teaching.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because so I have this thing about being excellent. Like, what is excellence?
Mm-hmm.
And it's different for you, it's different for me, it's different for my wife, it's different for my employees. But the idea is excellence is who is my best self. And
Mm-hmm.
how can I sustain that over time?
Yeah.
That's what I try to teach them. Excellence, I found it's mindset times care times connection. E=mc squared. Mindset times care times connection. When someone focuses on those, teenagers, adults, my clients, it blows everything up to be rock solid. It's like rocket fuel for your life.
What is so when because you work with teenagers, they help run the stores, and those are your base of employees. I love the fact that you work with teenagers. I think it's fantastic that you're getting them to engage in conversation, because I think that a lot of times kids and teenagers are so talked at that they are not taught the skill of conversation with an adult. So they're easily overwhelmed or they're easily intimidated. And so they don't know how to engage in that conversation. So I think it's fantastic that you do that and that you're aware of that, to getting them asking questions and sharing with you. And what was going through my mind when you were talking, and one of the things that popped in was, wonder what it's like is as you coach also adult entrepreneurs in order to help make their businesses successful. Do you see the connection, even if they're decades apart in age? I mean, I could totally see you teaching an adult to ask questions, or you know what I mean, like to get outside the box and learn. And so how is that for you, transferring, one level of communication or one age group communication, and then going into an adult communication scenario with entrepreneurship? So can you talk a little bit about that connection and kind of what you have found?
Yeah, I found that the strategies are the same. The teenager, I'm trying to draw out of them to show that I'm listening and I'm trying to get them to think. And then one of my favorite strategies I use with them is when they come and they say, "Hey, Mark, we have this problem, blah, 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 blah." I say, "Well, Susan, how do you think we should solve that?"
Mm-hmm.
And the first time I asked our employees, "Well, what would you do? How would you think you should solve that?" It's amazing. They step back and they're all, "I don't know." And then they start thinking about it. And I just try to coach them to find their answer. Well, when I'm coaching other entrepreneurs, when I'm coaching executives, it's a lot of the same process. It's, well, what is, because I'm not in the executive shoes.
Mm-hmm.
I've been in the C-suite. I know what that's like. I'm not sitting there for their company, what they're dealing with, but I do know how to draw out of them what they think is best. They've just never taken the time to really sit down and plan it out and have someone question them.
Isn't that the truth? Taking the time to just really sit and think about it. And so many areas of coaching really deal with that, of literally sitting down and just taking the time to really think it through. One of my things is I teach on communication and how to gain better communication, whether it's you're hesitating, whether it's you're overthinking, you're over worrying, whatever that is. But sometimes it's really just about getting quiet in a moment and thinking the problem all the way through and realizing that the answers are within. But when people aren't used to that habit, and the other thing that was coming into mind for me, don't you believe that sometimes when people will get so much on their path of attempting to discover about themselves, and they're kind of, I always visualize it like they're thumbing around, we'll try this, well, kind of like you and your degrees, I'll try this, that's not working, I'll try this. Don't you think that sometimes what happens is we get bogged down in shaming ourselves, and that is a killer? Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And so shame depletes our courage, but it's often founded in the idea that we're comparing ourselves between where we are now and either where we believe we should be or where we think everyone else is.
That's right.
We're comparing ourselves to where we think that they are. Here's the great thing. I was meeting with a CEO a week ago, and I sat down with him. I said, David, here's the thing. You do not have anyone on your staff who's going to hold you accountable and tell you how it really is. I said, because by the time they get to you, they think they know what you want to hear.
Yeah.
And they filter it. My job, I will not filter it. I will tell you what I'm seeing. You get to make a decision.
Yeah.
And it's then that all of a sudden they go, oh, wait, that shame begins to peel away because they feel a level of trust. They feel a level of, oh, maybe I can do this. And even if they don't know how, I help walk them through a process of discovery so that shame falls away and it's replaced with this feeling of processing and making steps.
Yeah. Yeah.
And here's the great thing about steps. Shame also comes in, what if I make the wrong step? How many of you have ever danced before? And how many of you have ever stepped on someone else's toe when dancing? We've all done it. How many of us have gone dancing and don't like it, but we still try and we feel like we're making a fool of ourselves? Guess what? You're still dancing.
Yeah, and people, I think often there's they don't realize they're being perfectionist.
Well, that's exactly it. So allow yourself to trip and to fall. Allow yourself, because suddenly you may see something different or see the world differently from a new perspective.
I will tell you, I think one of the things I find interesting, especially now that I'm not in my 20s or 30s anymore. We're all about hovering into 50. And it's interesting to me how the game changes in the mindset and because I think I was blessed from an early age. Maybe it's because my dad was a very deliberate man, very respectful man. But I just never really cared about falling down. Like I could always get back up until I felt like I was falling down in my early 40s. And then I was shaming, not realizing I was shaming because I wasn't allowing myself to do what I like. You know what I mean by that?
Can I offer a quick strategy that?
Yes.
Okay. So one of the things I find with a lot of my clients, a lot of the things that I do is when they begin to have that shaming, one, it's starting from an internal conversation. And they feel like they failed. They feel like they've let someone down. They feel like they haven't done what they were intending to do for whatever reason. In those moments of reflecting, take the time to write down 3 things that you did learn. I learned I did not want to go into a particular profession.
Yeah.
It was fantastic. I was on my way to medical school. I learned that was not what I wanted.
Yeah.
I didn't fail. I learned that was not my passion. So people begin to look at the world as yes or no, instead of yes and not yet.
Yes and not yet. And I love what did you learn about what you don't like to do? I applied a similar strategy. I was working with a client and she was just sideways resentful against her mom. And, we all have our backgrounds, right? And she was very resentful against mom. Mom didn't sound like she was a very happy character. But either way, I said, what did your mom teach you not to do through mom's actions? Because you think about all these things that we discover that we want, but we learn so much about what we don't want to do simply by falling down, getting back up, or experiencing something that is not satisfactory to us, right? Yeah.
And isn't that just as powerful as figuring out what you do want to do, is figuring out what you don't want to do?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it clears it up for you. At least it gives you a sense of direction so you don't have to keep repeating the same cycle. Yeah. So
Yes.
if you had a client in front of you and they were kind of in that kind of place where I was at even 4 or 5 years ago, where I was understanding the day job wasn't going to work anymore, and I didn't quite know what direction to go in specifically. I had a hint for me, but some people really sit and say, well, what am I going to do? I feel stuck. I feel really stuck. What is a strategy or a perspective that you might give to somebody to kind of help them get unstuck, at least with taking a step in a different direction?
Start looking at things that you do enjoy. Start taking an internal, I guess, a measurement or checkbox of, I enjoyed it when I did this.
Yeah.
And then go find someone that's doing that and
Yeah.
just start asking questions. You're not interviewing, you're not solving the world's problems, you're just collecting data.
Yeah.
And so I find if you're trying to vacillate between, perfect example I've seen recently is going and getting their doctorate in physical therapy, or just completing, and I shouldn't say just, or completing their bachelor's in a different field. And that tension of trying to figure it out. And that individual just went to every person they could to just keep asking questions and not afraid. See, sometimes people are afraid to not know.
I agree with that. And I think that's kind of when we can get stuck in that perfectionist loop, right? So,
Yeah.
oh my goodness, this is already, I think we've already like flew through a half hour of the show. I knew this would happen once we get going. So having said that, we're going to take a quick break, folks. When we come back, I've got some more great questions for Mark. As far as where to get started, how do you stay in the loop? Where's the motivation? How to keep that primed and fueled and keep going forward? Interesting questions like that. In the meantime, Mark, they can check you out at the Happiness Breakthrough. Is that correct? Happinessbreakthrough.com.
That's correct.
And you can also reach me at SusanDenee.com. Other than that, we will be back here shortly. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Know You're Crazy Talk Show. My name is Susan Denee, and you are listening to Emotional Recovery in the Raw. And as you know, if you've been watching the show for a while, I like to cover key areas, and one of those is the professional and career area, along with, health and relationships and finances. But today's guest is Dr. Mark Leonard, and he successfully helps individuals find their entrepreneur spirit, plus leaders running businesses, CEOs, getting to the crux of stuckness, I think is what we were talking about a little bit earlier in coaching individuals and helping them find a new way. And Mark, we've engaged in such great conversation, anywhere from, the young adults coming out of high school and having so many questions to ask. And we briefly shared on what a great role you take in teenagers and giving them a voice and teaching them to articulate and to communicate with adults professionally. A great success story of your 19-year-old who's literally leading the #1 franchise. Is that the right way to say that? Or business?
It's a #3 franchise out of 100.
Out of 100, a 19-year-old is running that simply because, not even simply, but the effort that you put behind building them and teaching them. And I think trusting is such a key thing in development. And I think that trusting can come from whether we're investing our trust in our children, in young adults, or in adults, in middle-aged adults who, wouldn't you agree that we suffer from lack of esteem, sometimes more so than a young person, because we have a pile up of beliefs that have been piling for years. And you and I touched briefly on the shame that can come into that, but how do we pull out of that? And you were talking about a great suggestion of just ask yourself, what do you like to do? Getting started with, what is it that you enjoy? And then the next area I wanted to get into, because you do coach entrepreneurs, was what are like maybe 1, 2, 3 beliefs, whatever you have, that you think entrepreneurs may have that hinder them from opportunity and growth? Like where do they get stuck when they're either in the beginning of the business building or even midway in that?
Oh, that's a fabulous question. The #1 problem that I tend to see is one of two things. The first is if I build it, they will come.
Mm.
And although that is a great Hollywood plot, it is not necessarily accurate for owning and running businesses. And my wife and I, we've owned several businesses, and some have been wildly successful, and others we've just learned a wild amount. We've never failed; we just learned a lot. And so that whole idea of if I build it, well, they'll just show up. The other major thing is people then, entrepreneurs, we tend to be willing to work 80 hours a week so we don't have to work 40 hours for somebody else. When that happens, we also tend to let go of our routines that have made us successful.
Fantastic point. Yeah.
And so I find that's one of the lies that people tell each other is, or tell themselves is, I'll have time for that next week. How about figure out what those habits are that have gotten you to this point and make sure you bake that into your schedule.
Yeah. Do you think it's a matter of having really healthy boundaries with yourself? Right.
Oh yeah. My favorite appointment in my calendar is one with me.
Yeah.
It's an appointment with me. That means that, we all have bots that go out and do scheduling for us, and people go to my website. Some of those times that I am unavailable are because I'm working on me.
Yeah.
And I have to have that balance, because if I'm not willing to keep working on me, how will I be my best for you?
Yeah.
And so sometimes the entrepreneur goes, well, I'm too busy. And so I don't have time to do those things anymore. And that begins to slip. The other area, sorry, did you have a question?
No, no, keep going.
The other area where I see a lot of entrepreneurs trip up is they forget to keep dating their spouse.
Good point. Love that.
I've got to tell you, we've been married 31 years. Wow, that's a lot. 31 years today, or this year. And I've got to tell you, we've had ups and downs. We've had great times. We've had tragedies. But we continue to date each other.
Yeah.
Tonight is a perfect example. We've both been going crazy all day. And when this interview is done, I have less than an hour between this and my next meeting. And my wife and I are like, okay, where can we go to go grab a quick dinner to just catch up?
Yeah. Yeah.
But get out of the mode, connect real quick, and then we'll get back to work.
Isn't that true? So many people, I think, sometimes wonder, how do you have a successful marriage? How do you have a successful relationship? And like anything else, it has to be a priority within your schedule. It has to be there. It has to be on that calendar. One of the things my husband and I do is like Wednesday nights, because between the two of us, 5 children. And so when you're raising 5 children, and I love the way that you said 3 of them are off the payroll now. We still have 2 left. But the Wednesday night thing is something that we set aside. And the other thing that we do is every few months, we just take off for a weekend. We'll find a way to get out of town for the weekend. One time we weren't even out of town. We were like 3 miles down the road and caught a hotel room, right? But just the idea of taking yourself out of the environment and shutting the laptop off, him shutting his work phone off, and saying, this is where we go play. This is where we play.
You know what? And entrepreneurs, if they stop dating their spouse, the whole reason why they got into this, most entrepreneurs, we want freedom. But then the business becomes our prison.
Yeah.
And suddenly those things that we wanted for freedom are fleeting. So we have to be very intentional about, and I love that. We do those vacations as well. We've done everything from the hotel down the road to surprise trips around the world, whatever it is.
Yep.
And whatever is best for you in your particular situation at the time.
Yeah.
It's okay to call up mom and dad, grandma and grandpa, and say, hey, could you take the kids overnight? And you're going out of town and it's in your own room, in your own house.
Yeah, that's so true.
Spend the time together.
One of the things I used to say, and I should probably start bringing it up again, is I would say we forget that, especially if you're whatever it is people do professionally, but we forget sometimes that all this energy that we're putting into making money and all this energy we're getting into, cleaning the house and making sure it's taken care of and using, we forget that that's actually supposed to be enjoyed. The space that's over our head is supposed to be enjoyed. It's not always supposed to be a chore. Like, you should be able to walk into your space and feel relaxed. It doesn't always need to be worked on and manipulated, and remind ourselves that the reason why we're doing what we're doing, whether that's entrepreneur or whether that's working at the day job, whatever it is, that we're doing that, just like you said, to have some sense of freedom, to have that sense of freedom. I mean, freedom is huge. It is so huge, and not being bound tight to those to the chores.
But here's what's interesting is freedom comes through being intentional.
Yeah.
And so we have to intentionally put aside time for dating. We have to intentionally put aside time to work on that next project. We have to intentionally put time towards the fires that we know are going to pop up. But you have to be intentional about your time, intentional about your time with yourself. And you have to be able to have boundaries. There are times that we have gone on vacation, and the mark of success for our business is when we got back, we asked ourselves, did the employees burn it down? Oh, yeah. That was success.
I said that too. Only to the house and leaving a couple kids, older kids home. I'm like, hey, remember that one time we came back? Nothing was wrong. Like, nothing got burnt down. Like, you have to remind yourself that it's usually like 99.9% of the time it's okay.
Yeah. And guess what? If it does burn down, thank goodness you could do it again.
I will tell you, here's a funny story. So, well, it's funny now. It was always kind of humorous for me. But when my husband and I, second marriage for me and number 3 for him. And so this was back in 2014. So we're still going strong. And we took all our blended family, went to Hawaii. Now, I've been in recovery from addiction and alcoholism for 21 years. And so helped, women in that realm for many years. And so I had one of the women I was helping back then house sit for me. And she had a year of sobriety. And so we go to Hawaii, and you never know in sobriety. Sometimes we're ready for the good stuff, and sometimes we're not. We might drink because it's good, or we may drink and use because it's bad. Like, you don't know. But this was like her first kind of like opportunity to be not in a sober living. So she relapsed in our home. And so while we were in Hawaii, we were getting calls that so-and-so was locked in the house. And it's so, but I got to tell you, I wasn't worried about it. I wasn't stressed about it. It was like, whatever is supposed to happen is going to happen. And guess what? We came home and the house was fine, and she had left, and she got to have her own experience with that. And today I'm glad to say, I think she's pushing 10 years clean and sober, makes over 6 figures, doing fantastic as an individual, right? Growth through the roof. But so that's what I mean. So it's not always as bad as we think it is. And if we're setting ourselves up for failure because we're scared of coloring outside the box, or we're scared of taking time for ourselves because of all the made up stories, the what ifs of stress, right? Yeah. We are so accountable to that sometimes. We have to really watch that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so being willing to you don't want to set yourself up for failure, but you want to set yourself up to expand.
Very good. Yeah.
And so giving yourself that time to go, okay, how can I do it? So as an entrepreneur who has owned many businesses, my wife and I, we sold women's clothing. I know more about women's fashion than I ever thought I would. That is not something as a little boy you go, when I wake up, when I grow up, this is what I'm going to do. But that's what I was in for a while.
Yeah.
And I've done jewelry. I've done all these other things. But the thing is, I've never failed again. I've only learned. Yeah. And I've learned even better to set boundaries. And now that I'm saying yes to the right things for me,
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean I'm just saying no, no, no,
Yeah.
because that's really bad advice. Say no to everything
Yeah.
is really, really bad advice.
Mm-hmm.
How about instead look for win-wins, delegation, ways to pair up with somebody else, ways to partner to make things happen. And now after filing bankruptcy twice, losing everything twice, we
Yeah.
own 3 businesses.
That's just it's so fantastic. I love hearing that. I know you had mentioned that story when we were in California for the summit, and you had mentioned that, and just the comeback in that. But it's like once we fall down, we know how we got there, and we also know how we built it the first time. So it really is about just applying. Where did I learn, and how can I improve upon that learning, and to make this happen again? I was so, yeah, that I loved hearing that story. Because it shows people, whoever's watching this right now, if you're feeling like you're stuck, or you're feeling like there's no chance, or how do I get out of this 9 to 5 job or this desk job? I mean, the proof is in the pudding. Finding out what you like is a great place to start. And then, wouldn't you agree, the curiosity that was coming in my mind as you were sharing, as you're like, we've had this women's clothing business, and we've had this, I think it's ice cream now, isn't it? Is it ice cream?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's ice cream. And so the curiosity is what was coming mind to me, is that you are fantastic at being curious.
And that curiosity
Yeah.
has got to me in trouble, but it's also made me phenomenally successful because
Yeah.
successful people are always curious. They're
Yeah.
always asking, right? They're always trying to figure out, oh, what can I do? Ooh, how can I
Yeah.
improve upon this? How can I make this better? Whatever it is.
So there is one question I have for you that earlier we went off on, those like things that mistakes that entrepreneurs may make, or beliefs they may have that hinder them. But one of them was, you said they believe that if they built it, they will come. And so tell me a little bit about that. Like where's
Mm.
the what's, because I know what's going through my mind when you said it, but I want to know what your feedback is on that. Like what's going on there for them?
So my number one thought is stop focusing on building it perfectly and start focusing on get something out there to sell.
Yeah.
Get it to sell. Is it a product, a book, a course, jewelry? Is it uh, ice cream? I don't care what it is.
Yeah.
Get a product and then start selling and then start creating a system to expand and grow.
Yeah.
Don't worry about solving all the problems, because that's where perfectionists
Mm-hmm.
begin to falter.
Yeah.
Start looking at what can I do today to just get something out there. And it doesn't have to be perfect. By the way, who here remembers Windows 3.1, right? The very first Windows. And now we laugh about it because we go, that was a joke. It was filled with bugs. But guess what?
Yeah.
We now look at where we've gone because we continue to iterate and reiterate and continue to grow and improve. If we wait for something to be perfect, you'll never get anywhere.
That is so true. I mean, and it really depends, so my personal experience around that, when I decided to go out on my own, I mean, it was quite a journey. When it because I knew I wanted it way before. This is why my motto is just don't stop. This is why my motto is just don't stop. Because even when you're not sure of what that may be to sell, the pieces of the puzzle will slowly come into place if you just don't stop, right? And so for me, it was launching, like this podcast was launched a year ago, last month. And that was the beginning of, did I have the product to sell? Not yet, other than coaching, right? Always had the coaching, but other products, no, not yet. But the podcast is the one that started to fuel the action. And until that, pretty soon the content starts getting created. And then pretty soon the discipline has to kick in. And so it's an example of, if you get something to get sold, that momentum, you are forced to build on it. You're forced to build it. And it doesn't mean that, every department is already created, which I think is what you're talking about, because people think about going into business for themselves, and you are bombarded with everything that needs done, whether that's taxes and departments and marketing and all these different things. I loved your answer on that, because my mind didn't go there. My mind was in marketing, but your mind was in, you got to get a product to sell. So true.
Get it to sell. Stop trying to perfect it. Be okay using a folding table. I was at a local office supply store the other day, and I watched these two guys walk around, two desks, two chairs, two printers, two monitors, two of everything. And I went, I run $1 million businesses like with a rickety table. You don't have that. This chair that I'm sitting on, I'd be embarrassed to show you. And here's the irony. I could afford to go buy one.
Yeah.
But it's like, is that the best use of my time? Do I have to perfect everything?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
No, I just need to have something for sale and just start getting it out there and be okay with failing, because it's about action. Go back to my dance analogy. It's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Like, you're going to be rocking back and forth.
Yeah.
Or you're going to do the junior high, just one spot, never doing anything but moving from your hip up because all you're doing is swaying. But that's action.
Yeah, it's action. And what I'm loving about what you're saying is it's action. And what you're sharing with everyone is it's also a level of awareness that you must have, that you are going to be swaying and you're going to be dancing. So when it's happening, just be aware that that's what's happening. I was just talking to a mentee of mine today, and she just wrote her first book. I'm so excited for her. She's gonna be on the show next week. So excited for her. But she was talking about recording the Audible, and she's like, "Oh my goodness, here I thought, X, Y, and Z, and 9 hours later, I'm still like on the intro, right?" And I said, "Isn't it kind of like that when you decide to jump in?" Your expectation on some things is we think it's simple, but you're on a learning curve, and so you're gonna have the bumps. I have two where all of a sudden 5 hours, I'm like, what happened to 5 hours? Like, and I'm still looking at the same, whatever, but you're constantly learning and you're constantly doing that curve. And you're essentially in all of that, you are building your business. Like, that's part of the journey.
Yeah. And notice I never once said work 24 hours a day.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have to have balance. Now, if you're working, I used to be in that 9 to 5. Okay, it was never 9 to 5. It was 8 to 6 or 8 to 7, right? And then I was trying to build something on the side. I carved out 15, 20, 30 minutes a day.
Yep.
That's it. A little bit every single day. And next thing you know, you look back and you're like, it needs editing, but this isn't bad. I've got something because it's better than what I had before. And be okay making iterations. Be okay just swaying and being in action, and be okay with sucking. It's okay to suck.
Totally.
Because the first business I started was not a top-rated, very successful business.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I learned so much in that process.
And you learn so much in there. And so I'm still relatively new to my own business, right? But I still remember I was at the day job, still working there. So what I did, and let me see what your thoughts are on this, is when I knew that I was going to be breaking into a whole new arena, completely different than anything I had done, although your past does help because you bring, I gave myself a 10-year goal. And I don't even know what that 10-year goal was. I think, I had like an idea of where I wanted to be, but I gave it a 10-year goal because I figured in my mind, because this could be pro or con depending on how far you go out, but I was thinking to myself, it'll allow me to give myself at least enough grace to not stop and to keep going forward. And somehow it allowed me not to put a ton of pressure. But it got me through transitioning from the day job into getting out on my own and doing those things like you just talked about, where it was take an hour here, take maybe a Saturday here and learn this, or listen to these people, or, oh my goodness, I don't know how many books I read. Right. But it's like that little bit of action every single day towards, so it doesn't always happen overnight. Yeah.
Overnight success normally takes about 10 years.
Yeah.
Overnight success takes about 10 years. And that's okay, as long as you understand that.
Yeah.
And it's okay, but get a mentor, get a coach, get someone that's going to help you along that process.
Yep.
that is going to help you see the world in a way that you haven't seen it before.
I love that. I talk about that almost every week on the show, that you don't have to do these things alone. It's okay to ask for help. You know, I was looking at something today and the word isolation had come up, and it was talking about, do you know the difference between isolating or just solitude? And I think sometimes that's always a good thing to look at, because, you know, meeting you, for example, was part of being plugged into a community. And that has taken time for me, you know, because we get into the communities and we might feel out of our skin. We don't really feel comfortable. Like, it's a whole thing, but getting connected to community, getting connected to a mentor, getting connected to a coach, getting connected to somebody who's been there and done that and excels, that can lead you and help you so that you're not alone. That is so huge. So huge.
We are designed, absolutely designed to connect with people.
Yeah.
The hormones that release when we connect with people, the way that it helps us think and frame and process, the way that we begin to see the world only happens through connections. So get connected and stay connected with people.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I had a woman just recently, I had met her on a whim, right? And she'd been sober 17 years. And so, you know, immediately we have this connection and we just start talking. And she says, well, what do you do? And I said, well, you know, the entrepreneur thing. Oh, well, I do this and I do that. I said, life coach. And she says, oh, I've always been interested in somebody who does a life coach. And I said, well, therapy may look backward, but life coach is going to look forward. We're going to help you look forward. You know, vision for the future, and how do you get there? And that's essentially the fantastic service that you've been offering individuals, specifically in all areas. And I do know that because you're a high performance coach also. But when you zero in on the entrepreneurs and and I love the work you do with the kids. But when you zero in on that, that is such a needed service, I believe, because we are in a phase, in my opinion, based on online access. You know, I'm talking to my kids now about entrepreneurship before I'm talking to them about college. Now, whether or not they're going to listen and do it, you know, that's out of my hands, but I get to encourage them in a different way now, and also tell them about how an education benefits that, right? But anyway, it's just, you do an amazing service for individuals. And please remind everyone, because I know we're coming close to a wrap, how can they get a hold of you, Mark?
Easiest way to get a hold of me is go to thehappinessbreakthrough.com.
Yep. And you are for hire, is that correct?
I am. I do not take very many because I own several businesses and have multiple clients, but I am for hire. I speak, I coach, and I consult.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me on the Know You're Crazy show. I think you really help some entrepreneurs get a better perspective on their crazy. And I appreciate that. And for everyone out there, this video will be split up and edited and all kinds of things for the rest of the week. I'll be playing clips from the show. If you've got any questions for me, you can reach out to SusanDenee.com. And I also am taking clients right now. So feel free, if you're interested in some one-on-one coaching, be more than happy. So everyone have a blessed evening. It was great for you to join us. And thank you so much, Mark. Super great having you.
Thank you.
You have been listening to Know You're Crazy.
Crazy.
And my name is Susan Denee. We are identifying, understanding, and treating your crazy one episode at a time. Tune in to transformationtalkradio.com. To connect with me or Growth Spurt Your Life, please visit SusanDenee.com. That's Susan Denee, DENEE.com.